I never planned on being a regular. The coffee shop sat at the end of my block, the kind of place you pass by without looking up. A chipped green awning, one of the letters on the sign flickering out at night. But after I moved into the new apartment, I started stopping there in the mornings, mostly because it opened earlier than the chain stores. That's how I first noticed her. She wasn't a barista. She always sat at the same table, tucked near the back, where the morning sun caught the corner of her face through the glass. A woman in her 40s, maybe older, with a stack of papers and a travel mug she never seemed to drink from. She didn't glance at people coming in. At least, not often. The first time our eyes met, it wasn't anything cinematic. I'd dropped a packet of sugar and it skidded too close to her chair. She nudged it back toward me with her foot, without a word. I mumbled thanks, and she gave the kind of smile that didn't quite reach the rest of her face. After that, I noticed her more. I started timing my visits to line up with hers, though I'd never admit that out loud. Some mornings she was bent over a notebook, pen tapping against the page. Other days she stared out the window like she was waiting for something that never came. And once or twice, she caught me watching, and I looked away too fast, pretending to study the pastry case like I had decisions to make. It was small things that pulled me in. The way she folded and unfolded the cardboard sleeve of her cup. How she pinched the bridge of her nose when the light hit just wrong. The faint, dry humor in her voice the morning the espresso machine broke and she muttered, "Tragedy at dawn," mostly to herself. I laughed without meaning to, and she looked at me then, really looked, and for a second it felt like we shared the same private joke. I never said much. I wasn't good at small talk, and she didn't invite it. My life at that point was quiet, classes, a part-time job, evenings alone in my apartment. I'd scroll my phone but stop short of sending anything. Half-written messages to friends, to no one in particular. Deleted before I hit send. But the coffee shop became my ritual. She was part of it, even if we hardly spoke. One Thursday morning, the place was emptier than usual. Rain had kept most people home. I sat at the counter, pretending to read. She walked past me on her way out, her coat pulled close, hair damp from the mist. For a moment, I thought she was leaving without a glance. But then, she paused. Set her hand lightly on the counter near mine. Not touching, but close enough I noticed the faint tremor in her fingers. "You always order the same thing," she said. Her voice was low, matter of fact. I blinked, startled she'd spoken to me at all. "Habit, I guess. You should try something stronger." She let the words hang, then added, "Not coffee." Her eyes held mine a little longer than polite before she moved toward the door. I watched her leave, heart knocking in my chest, unsure if I'd imagined the whole exchange. Back at my table, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Just 5 words on the screen, "Stay a while." My place. I read it twice, then a third time, not moving. The coffee in front of me had already gone cold. Her apartment was just 1 floor above mine, the same narrow staircase with peeling paint, but it felt entirely different stepping inside. Warm light, books stacked on the floor in uneven towers, the faint smell of lemon cleaner undercut by something softer, lavender, maybe. She moved through the space without ceremony, setting her keys on the counter, slipping her shoes off by the door. I stood there too long, not sure if I should follow or wait. "Tea?" she asked, already filling a kettle. "Sure." My voice came out smaller than I intended. We sat across from each other at her kitchen table, mugs between us. The rain pressed against the window, filling the silences we didn't. She asked about school, about my classes. I gave half answers, shrugging. She didn't press. At some point, she leaned back, studying me in a way that made my chest tighten. "You remind me of someone," she said. "Yeah. My son's friend. From high school." She smiled, faint, almost apologetic. He'd sit here at this table after practice, drink all my juice boxes, never said thank you. There was a pause. Something flickered across her face, memory shading into regret. Haven't seen him in years. I nodded, though I wasn't sure what to say. The reminder of her age, the gap between us, it landed heavy in the room. I wrapped my hand around the mug to keep from fidgeting. The kettle clicked in the sink. A drip. A tick of the clock. Too loud all at once. I caught myself imagining things, her hand brushing mine if I reached across the table, what it might feel like to sit closer. I pushed the thoughts down, embarrassed by them, though the silence seemed to pull me back toward them anyway. You live alone? I asked finally. She glanced toward the empty hallway, then back at me. For a while now. She said it plainly, but her eyes softened as though she'd given away more than she meant to. I nodded again. I do too. That earned me the smallest smile, a thread of understanding stretched between us. We drifted into silence again, this one less sharp, more weighted. She toyed with the edge of a coaster, turning it in her fingers. I noticed how her nails were short, uneven, like she chewed them when she thought too much. The rain slowed. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping across her living room wall. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. I fumbled for something to say, but words felt clumsy. She reached out, not to hold me, not even to stop me. Just a light touch on my sleeve, her fingers resting there for a second too long. You'll figure it out, she said quietly, though I didn't know what she meant. Then she let go, and the door clicked shut behind me. I started stopping by the coffee shop less, telling myself I was busy. But the truth was, after that night in her apartment, I wasn't sure how to act. The memory of her hand on my sleeve stayed with me longer than it should have. One evening, I found myself in the shared laundry room, folding shirts that didn't need folding just to pass the time. She came in with a basket balanced against her hip. We both froze like we hadn't expected the other to exist outside that kitchen table. You do laundry at night too, she said, setting her basket down. Less crowded, I muttered. She smiled faintly, then went quiet, pulling clothes from the basket with practiced precision. I tried not to watch her, but my eyes kept flicking back, to the way she smoothed each shirt before laying it flat, to the line of her wrist when she reached. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but it pressed at me, thick with something I couldn't name. I wanted to say something casual, something normal, but my throat tightened instead. That was when the door creaked open. My friend Dan leaned in, loud, careless, the way people in their 20s often are. Man, you disappear lately, he said, tossing me a grin. Then he noticed her. Oh. Hey. Her expression shifted, just slightly, like a mask being slid into place. She nodded at him politely. This your neighbor? Dan asked, eyebrows raised. Yeah, I said quickly, too quickly. Just, laundry schedule overlap. Dan smirked, not buying it, but he didn't linger. He gave a half wave and left, the door thudding shut behind him. I glanced at her. She was folding a towel now, more carefully than necessary. I'm sorry about that, I said. Why? I don't know. He makes everything sound obvious. She let out a small laugh. Dry, but real. You're young. Everything is obvious when you're young. The words stung more than they should have. We worked in silence for a while longer, the hum of the dryer filling the space. My thoughts circled, did she regret letting me upstairs? Did she want me to keep my distance now? Or was I imagining something that was never there? When I finished folding, I gathered my clothes too quickly, shirts slipping from my arms. She reached out to steady them, her hand brushing mine, just a second, just enough to stop my breath. Our eyes met. The air between us shifted, sharpened. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe, but she drew her hand back, slow, deliberate. You should go, she said softly. It wasn't cold. It wasn't dismissive. It sounded almost like a warning. I nodded, though my chest felt tight. I left with my laundry, the weight of what almost happened following me back up the stairs. It was late afternoon when I saw her sitting on the bench outside the building. The kind of in-between hour where the sun was already soft, but the streetlights hadn't clicked on yet. She had her jacket draped across her lap, head tilted back, eyes closed like she'd stolen 5 quiet minutes from the world. I almost kept walking. But she opened her eyes as if she'd felt me, and lifted her hand in a small gesture, half wave, half invitation. Long day? I asked, lowering myself onto the bench. She gave a tired smile. They're all long. Her voice was quiet, frayed at the edges. For a while, we just sat there. Cars hummed past on the street, footsteps echoed from the building's entrance. She smoothed the fabric of her jacket over and over, like it steadied her. You don't really talk much, she said finally. Sorry, I muttered. It's not a complaint. She glanced at me. It's just, most people fill silence with noise. You don't. I didn't know how to answer that. So I said the first thing that came, sometimes I don't trust what I'd say if I did. Her eyes lingered on me then, and something inside me shifted. I realized she was waiting, maybe not for words, but for honesty. You ever feel like you're in the wrong chapter of your own life? I asked. Like you showed up too early, or too late, and everyone else knows the timing but you? She let out a sound, not quite a laugh. Every day. She turned her gaze back to the street, her expression loosening. I got married young. Thought I knew everything. Thought it would anchor me, I guess. Instead, it unraveled. Slowly. Her hand stilled on the jacket. Sometimes I think I've been living in the aftermath ever since. I swallowed hard. She'd never given me that much of herself before. And it hurt, hearing it. Not because I pitied her, but because I recognized the loneliness inside it. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I like being around you. Her shoulders tensed. She didn't look at me right away. When she finally did, her eyes were sharper, guarded. You shouldn't say that, she whispered. Why not? Because I don't know if I want to hear it. The silence that followed was unbearable. I wanted to reach out, close the space between us, erase the years stacked between our lives. My hand shifted an inch on the bench, almost toward hers, before I stopped. She saw the movement. For a breath, she didn't move either. Then she stood, pulling her jacket tight around her shoulders. We should go inside, she said, her voice unsteady but calm, like she'd just sealed off a flood. She didn't wait for me to answer. And I didn't follow, just sat there, the imprint of her almost touch heavy against my skin. The next few days, I didn't see her at all. No coffee shop. No laundry room. No bench out front. The absence felt louder than any presence, like a skipped heartbeat I kept waiting for. By the 4th day, I started timing my walks to accidentally pass her door. Each time I slowed down, half expecting it to swing open. It never did. On the 5th evening, I spotted her at the cafe again. But she wasn't alone. A man sat across from her, mid-50s, neatly dressed, his tie loosened like he'd just come from work. He leaned forward, talking with easy familiarity. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I froze in the doorway. Something in me twisted. I told myself it was nothing, just an old friend, maybe. But when his hand brushed hers across the table, the air seemed to shift. She didn't pull away. I left without ordering. Back in my apartment, the walls felt thinner than ever. I kept hearing echoes that probably weren't there, the low murmur of her voice, the scrape of a chair, a muffled laugh. I turned on music, then turned it off. Poured water, left it untouched. My phone sat on the table, screen lit with half-typed messages. Are you okay? Do you want company? Forget it. Delete, delete, delete. 2 days later, I finally saw her again, alone this time, carrying groceries up the stairs. I hesitated at my door before offering, "Need help?" She looked startled, then quickly masked it with a smile. "No, I've got it." But her voice was thinner than usual. She moved past me, bags rustling, shoulders tight. Something was different. Colder. That night, I couldn't sleep. I found myself replaying every small thing, her hand on my sleeve, the look she'd given me on the bench, the man in the cafe. I tried to convince myself none of it mattered. That she'd just been kind, neighborly, nothing more. But the lie kept cracking. Around midnight, I typed another message. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do here." My thumb hovered over send until the screen dimmed. I let it fade out. The next morning, her bench outside was empty. The cafe table too. Her blinds were drawn. By evening, I stood outside her door, laundry basket in hand as an excuse. I raised my fist once, twice, but never knocked. I set the basket down in my apartment and listened, straining for any sound from upstairs. Nothing. Just silence, too thick to breathe through. I lay in bed that night, eyes fixed on the ceiling. My phone was on the nightstand, glowing with a message draft I hadn't deleted. "Tell me if I should stop." It stayed unsent. It happened on a Sunday night. I'd gone down to get the mail, though I knew there'd be nothing. She was coming in at the same time, coat pulled tight, hair damp from drizzle. For once, neither of us pretended not to notice. We walked the stairs together, slow, the sound of our shoes echoing in the narrow hall. When we reached her door, she stopped, shifting the grocery bag on her arm. "Do you want to come in?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, clutching the keys too tightly, knuckles pale. Inside, the apartment was dim, only one lamp lit. She set the bag on the counter and let out a sigh, like she'd been holding it all day. I stood awkwardly by the door, unsure if I should sit or wait. "You can relax, you know," she said, half smiling. "You always look like you're about to apologize for existing." I let out a nervous laugh and finally sat at the kitchen table. She joined me, resting her elbows on the wood. For a while, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked. The fridge hummed. I could hear the faint patter of rain against the window. "I saw you the other day," I blurted. Her head tilted. "At the cafe?" "Yeah." She didn't flinch, just pressed her lips together. "He's my ex. We still talk sometimes. Old habits." I nodded, though something inside me knotted tighter. She looked down at her hands. "I thought maybe if I kept a distance, this would fade. Whatever this is." Her words landed heavy, but not cruel. Honest, almost tired. I swallowed. It didn't fade. That made her look at me. Really look. Her eyes searched mine, as if weighing whether to close the space between us or shut it forever. "You're too young," she whispered. "And I stopped myself. You're not who I expected to need." The silence after that felt fragile, like one wrong word could shatter it. My chest ached with the weight of everything I'd almost said in the last weeks. All the messages unsent, the knocks never made. I leaned forward, just slightly, enough that I could see the faint lines around her eyes, the way her breath caught. "I like being here," I said softly. "Even if it's nothing more. Even if it's just this." Her face shifted, softened. She reached across the table, not dramatic, not pulling me in. Just her hand over mine, warm, steady. "We'll regret it," she murmured. "Probably," I admitted. And for the first time, she smiled, not guarded, not polite, but small and real. Her thumb brushed against my hand once before pulling away. Okay, she said. It was enough. Weeks blurred into something steadier. Nothing happened all at once, no declarations, no sudden unraveling. Just small adjustments, like furniture slowly shifted in a room until you realized you'd been living differently all along. She still sat on the bench outside sometimes, jacket folded across her lap. But now, when I walked by, I didn't hesitate. I sat down beside her, like the space had always been meant for two. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just watched cars drift past, or neighbors heading home, the air filled with the low hum of ordinary life. One morning, I caught her in the cafe again, alone at the back table. I ordered my usual black coffee and slid into the chair across from her. She raised an eyebrow. Same thing, every time, she teased. Habit, I said. She leaned forward, voice low. Still afraid to try something stronger? I smiled. Not anymore. We shared the kind of silence that didn't weigh so heavily anymore. It settled like a blanket, warm, lived in. She tapped her finger against the cardboard sleeve, and without thinking, I reached over and steadied her restless hand. She didn't pull away. Evenings became easier too. Sometimes I'd bring my laundry upstairs, and she'd make tea, always the same chipped mugs, always too hot at first. We'd talk about nothing, her patients, my classes, the leaky faucet in the hallway. I never noticed when I stopped hovering near the door, or when she stopped pretending I was just a neighbor. It wasn't perfect. She'd retreat some days, quieter than usual, the kind of silence that carried old weight. I learned not to push, just to sit with her, letting the kettle's whistle fill the room until she was ready to come back. And I had my own storms, moments of doubt when I'd wonder how it looked from the outside, if people noticed the years between us. But in the end, it mattered less than I thought it would. One evening, after a rain shower, we found ourselves on the bench again. The wood was damp, the air smelling faintly of earth and asphalt. I handed her the thermos I'd brought, tea this time, not coffee. She took it, fingers brushing mine. Better than juice boxes, I said. She blinked, then laughed, remembering what she'd told me weeks ago about her son's old friend. A sound that felt lighter than any I'd heard from her before. The streetlights flickered on, washing the sidewalk in gold. We sat there, shoulders close, passing the thermos back and forth until it was empty. And for the first time, I realized we didn't need to say what this was. It had already settled in around us, something stronger than coffee, steadier than silence. Not a rescue, not a fantasy. Just two lives, overlapped in the right chapter at last. She leaned against me, brief but certain. Okay, she whispered. And that was enough.